Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast, can at times contain adult language and themes. It is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Digital Dissection podcast, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look at our favorite properties, creators, and topics. We are your humble hosts, Joe and Mark, two pop culture nerds dedicated to telling entertainment history before it's forgotten too soon. Join us on Facebook, Twitter, and our blog for more information on the show. We also love to hear from you. Write us at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get to dissecting. Looking good down there.
yeah, looking quite good. Yeah.
Oh man,
I think this movie is probably where I got the whole need to do the German accent thing from. Is my guess.
yeah.
So for those of you who I don't think we've ever talked about the German game that I used to play with my friends when we'd go road tripping to go snowboarding. When you get through Nebraska, if you're just driving through, you don't live there, it's not very entertaining. It's just 508 miles of pretty much flat. So we would have an agreement that I'd hold this obnoxious, snooty German accent through the whole state. And if I don't break it, each of my friends would buy me a dinner. But if I broke, I'd have to buy dinner for everyone in one night. So I'd talk the whole time like this, and I would claim how everything that was in Germany was just better than what you have here in the United States. Like you have the Walmart. Well, we have even bigger convenience centers with even more things for cheaper. But the quality is much higher because it was made in Germany, as you know.
I feel like we did bring this up with Kylie Bear when he was on, because it felt like a joke that he would really kind of get behind, or at least something that he would really want to do himself, being a man of like 1,000 voices.
This is true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this movie, like the Germans in this movie are just fantastically over the top. And we'll get to like the various guest stars that they have as the Germans. Phenomenal.
Yeah. Which reminds me, we should probably introduce the movie that we are going to be discussing, which is 2006's Beerfest.
Yes. I was totally fine with just carrying on over ridiculous German accents the whole time. But yeah, let's talk about Beerfest. I feel like this was like an underrated movie. I really do. I think everyone was expecting kind of like just, I don't know if they was expecting like Super Troopers 2.0. And this wasn't quite that. It had a lot of similar humor. They did have a lot of throwbacks in there. I think you had Six Schlitzes being ordered again by Kevin, or Landfill in this movie, or Farva. So they bring a few things back. But this is one where I feel like there was a little bit of hype for, and then I feel like it just died right away. Like I remember one of those movies you see you've got trailers for I feel like a solid month before the movie comes out, and then it hits the opening day. You couldn't go over the weekend because there are other things going on, and then suddenly you just never hear about the movie again.
Well, it's kind of the nature of studios making deals in order to make other films. This joke was actually brought up in Arrested Development, where Tom Jane makes a formulaic movie in order to make a gritty drug movie, right? and this isn't necessarily the same exact thing, but J. Chandrasekhar, who directed this movie, who some people call like the spiritual leader of Broken Lizard, the comedy troupe that was in these films, there was a deal brokered with Warner Brothers when he directed the Dukes of Hazzard film. And he said, if I'll do this film for you, if I can make this one. So that's how we ended up getting Beerfest. So when I think about that, since it's a deal brokered, my thought process is maybe WB didn't put as much backing behind it that a typical, big budget film would get from, marketing standpoint, even like theater distribution and how many theaters physically carry the film. So that's why I think it kind of disappeared, just kind of came and went. Now, before we hit the record button, Joe and I were kind of talking about how Beerfest is technically like the the fourth major film that the Broken Lizard, comedy group ended up making. And yeah, it definitely felt like it was a word of mouth film, unlike any of the others that had come
Yeah,
out so
well,
far.
I mean, Club Dread, I felt was pretty word of mouth. Like, I don't remember here seeing any advertising for that movie. I remember I think the only advertising I saw for it was like we went to rent it, and it was solely that like the big sticker on it said from the same people who brought you Super Troopers.
Yeah,
Which did Club Dread come out before or after Super Troopers?
came in after Super
Okay,
Troopers.
gotcha.
Yeah.
For a second there, I thought maybe this was like a hey, Super Troopers was great. Maybe you haven't heard of this thing we already did called Club Dread, but I mean, I would love to do even a whole episode on just Club Dread. I remember my friends and I watching that and thinking like, this is the dumbest fun we've had in a long time. Flippin' love Club Dread. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so you've got Super Troopers, Club Dread, Dukes of Hazzard, and then this.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
I jokingly have called it the spiritual, fourth movie in the Broken Lizard
Mhm.
collection because, the Dukes of Hazzard film technically reunited all these guys in smaller roles, right?
Yeah, I mean, they with
Yeah.
their campus cops for the most part. They do a mother god bit, like,
Yeah.
homaging back to Super Troopers.
Yeah.
But for the most part, no, they have very minor roles in that film.
Yeah, like, I think Paul Soter plays,
Maybe
one of the newscaster guy, like, a news anchor. He's there for,
oh,
yeah, some of the big race in that movie, but
yep, and then,
I yeah.
Roscoe is in the movies. He was the priest in, Beerfest.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
it's kinda like the Christopher Nolan,
Mhm.
collection of actors. Um, his name is MC Gainey,
Yeah,
that
MC Katie,
specific
yeah,
yeah.
mhm,
So for those of you that don't know, like, what Broken Lizard is, it's a comedy troupe of, a couple of friends that were in the same fraternity in college,
mhm,
and they, ended up forming this comedy group that went on to make films. So, we talked about Jay already, who directed the
mhm.
movie. There's Kevin Heffernan that Joe mentioned, Steve Lem, Paul Soter, and then, Eric Stolhansky. So, these guys are, instantly recognizable to many comedy fans, but you may not know them by name, which, um, which is normal, but very
Mhm.
normal.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so very small distribution for this movie, and,
Mhm,
I would definitely say it flew under the radar because, for a comedy, you tend to see the ones that, like, go straight to DVD
mhm.
not actually be very funny at all, and they might waste money on, like, an expensive camera to shoot it, but then the content's just really bad, you know?
Yeah, yeah, they didn't put anything into the whole script or acting part of the thing. It's like, you know what? At least it's filmed pretty.
Yeah,
We got that. We
yeah,
put a lot of money into a crane to get a good establishing shot,
yeah,
and we're gonna use that in another film that we think will make money.
yeah, yeah. Which in this case, for a fairly underground comedy, this movie actually
Mhm.
does look pretty good. I thought it was pretty well
I
shot.
think so. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think the reason for why I think this movie, like, actually just physically pops is because it does use a lot of, like, contrast and bright colors, and,
Mhm.
it really does kinda jump off the screen in a way that a lot of comedies just don't,
Yeah.
and so I give credit to the guys that made this movie, especially Jay for his direction because, for I think the Broken Lizard movies are hilarious,
Mhm.
and, it's comedy that manages to actually tell a decent story, which we'll kinda get to in a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like, a beer fest, like, has, like you said, a decent story. It does, like, a lot of, like, these fun storytelling tropes where you've got, what they have, like, there's a bait and switch at some point in time in the movie. There's, like, an ace or someone who they have to beat, and it's got this I feel like it's any Olympics-based movie, but with drinking.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
what this movie is. Like, you could take like, this is The Mighty Ducks, but with beer and adults. This
yeah,
is Miracle, but with Germans instead of Russians, and it's just comedy because it's
yeah,
surrounding booze. It's all of those things. It takes everything from those movies, that you like with having, like, the little guy having to rise up and beat this much stronger, more powerful, like being or something, because it's this whole thing. Like it's the idea that like, Americans can't really drink. We just drink light beer and piss water. And so you go to like these other countries where they have heavier and darker beer, that we shouldn't be able to stand a chance. So it's just that's the concept, but just kind
Yeah,
of blown up to the Olympics. It's great. It's
yeah.
hilarious.
And technically, I think it makes sense, from that angle. Um, Speaking of the
Mhm,
technicals of this film for just a moment before we kinda get into the meat of it though, um, there are different versions of this movie out there, which we won't go
mm,
through beat for beat because, um, we'd rather have folks go back and kind of enjoy these things as we've covered in other properties. The whole point is to, make you remember, "Holy shit, this
mhm.
actually existed. I need to go back and look at this."
Yeah.
Um, and
Mhm,
Beerfest definitely is one of those films because, there's like I said, there's a couple different versions of it. There's an unrated
mhm.
one that has, 10 extra minutes of content, and the content that they weave in is actually still very funny, so I don't wanna ruin it for anybody.
Okay.
But it's
Mhm,
still very funny, and what they really just did was extend, context and scenes that, you
mhm.
know, you've seen time and time again. Now the only problem with the extended scenes though is that they are very noticeable. They're like in 480p, so like you can you can tell they're just a little bit
So,
worse,
yeah.
but
Mhm. No, yeah,
yeah.
we didn't tweak these ones, we didn't polish them. They didn't make the cutting room they didn't make the cutting room floor,
No,
so there's
no.
we stopped.
Yeah, there's no HD
Mhm.
filter on these scenes, unfortunately. One of the
Mhm,
funniest, featurettes, though, that comes with these different editions, there's
mhm.
there's actually a featurette where they, they go to a scientist who does handle frogs and breeds them, so, we've dubbed it the masturbating frogs featurette that does appear. Um, and then, WB
Mhm.
actually completely disavowed one of the, bonus features on these DVDs where
Oh.
the broken lizard guys just basically tell drinking stories, and,
Okay.
I will mention nothing of this because you need to watch this. It is so damn funny, and it is very vulgar, so even
Oh,
though we have the explicit
imagine.
warning.
Mhm.
Yeah, even though we have the explicit warning, we're not going to use it to its fullest potential today, so
Mm-mm.
we
No.
can walk past that. Um, but yeah, speaking of a compelling movie though,
Mhm.
I we did wanna kinda go through the actors and actresses of this film because it's a movie with a lot of recognizable people.
There's a lot of talent here outside of the Broken Lizard group. I think what you have are there actually 3 Academy Award winners in this movie?
Dude, it's got my boy Donald Sutherland.
Yeah.
I mean, right away. He's
Mhm.
uncredited. He plays their ailing grandpa, and in his honor, actually, people won't be able to see this, but I think I'm gonna chug a beer in his honor since he chugs 3 of them before he passes away. So, I'm gonna do that really quick, and
Alright.
hopefully this won't take long. So, Joe, we're gonna do honor system on this.
Mhm.
You just you don't have to count down. I'm just gonna chug this really quick.
Okay. I will let you know when he's done. So he started 1. He's got 1 done.
Alright.
There's
In his
1.
honor.
I will not be joining Mark in doing that activity. Um, I have what medical experts call a bitch esophagus that is really small and, doesn't like to function properly, so I have never been good at literally chugging anything, like, even water. If I try drinking that too fast, I'll probably die. So,
Gotta say,
this I would
uh,
not be on this team. Would not be on this team.
I gotta say when, so Donald Sutherland on his deathbed does chug, like, 3 beers in the movie, and, honestly, I can kind of understand why his eyes are watering because, I don't drink like that anymore. That's
I
ah,
mean, it still impressed me. Like,
yeah,
that was
that's
beautiful.
enjoyable. Yeah. But yeah, dude, supporting cast. So, Cloris
Mhm,
Leachman, who passed away, recently, she plays, like, the great grandma or great Gam
mhm.
Gam, is it great Gram Gam? I'm trying to
I
remember
think it's a
the
Gam Gam.
term.
I think it's Gam Gam.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm,
she's actually a pretty, well-established, long-running actress. She's been around for a long time, and, unfortunately, she's dearly missed, but she plays a hilarious supporting role in this movie.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Um,
old German grandmother, I think the how to warm up a sausage,
yeah,
scene will stick with everyone who's seen this movie.
and that's how they do it traditionally. It's not a joke. Yeah, dude, that's hilarious. Now, in a previous episode, we've actually
Mhm,
mentioned Jurgen Prochnow, who is one of he plays the grandfather for like the German competitors, like the main antagonists,
mhm.
and or I think it's Jurgen, not Jurgen. Sorry, I
Yep.
hard J on that one.
Jurgen sounds right,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, Jurgen Prochnow
Baron
though.
von
Yeah,
Wolfhausen?
yes,
Baron von Wolfhausen.
dude, he
Great
brings it to
German
this
name.
movie. He totally brings it to this movie, though.
Mhm.
You can tell that sometimes in a comedy that serious actors, and I hate to say serious quote unquote here,
No.
but someone who has played serious roles coming
Mhm.
into a comedy, he absolutely kills it. He's a fantastic like just bad guy. Um, and I don't know, I feel like he takes it seriously, doesn't he?
He does, like everything from, like, the scene where they're talking about how they're gonna get, the plans back from the Americans for, like, the perfect beer, and
Yeah,
he I think it's, like, Operation Steingraber is what he
yeah,
calls it, and everyone's like, "I think something else would sound better," and, like, all like, his grandchildren start, like, bickering over what they should call it, and he, like and then it's like,
yeah,
I think he slaps all of them.
yeah.
Like, "It's
He
Operation
just
Steingraber!"
Yeah, he just backs up and slaps the shit out of Will Forte, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Oh my
I
god,
I like
which
House 2006. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, I think I can still, like, to this day, like, always off distance, I will hear Will Forte saying, "What is it, grandpapa?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that s speaking of which, Will Forte, this is, like, early SNL Will Forte,
Mhm.
and, for a bad German accent executed perfectly, he does
Oh my
an
god.
amazing job.
He does
And yeah.
like I said, it's the perfect bad German accent, and this is pre MacGruber for him,
Yeah.
which I think is his other, like, that's his SNL film that he did, and, like, it's a perfect combination of oddly accurate and, like, cranking corny up to 11. And that's what he does for his German accent for this.
Yeah, and so universally recognized moment in our household is when
Mhm.
they tell the history of this beer recipe that disappeared from the von Wolfhausen family, and Will Forte says it was the greatest beer in all the world, and like it's I mean, if there's a quotable moment in this movie, easily one of the
Mhm.
biggest ones. But rounding out the cast, though,
Mhm.
I kind of consider him to be like a character actor, Nat Faxon. He plays one of the other German brothers of the hardcore German side for the Wolfhausens, and
Mhm.
a lot of folks don't know like Nat Faxon by name, but if you saw his face, you would instantly know who he is.
Yeah, I mean, he's, in this movie, he's the other similar build to Will Forte, the black slicked back hair.
Yeah.
Um, yep, mhm. He's not one of the giants that are here. That's Hammacher and Schlammer, those
Yes.
2, which, by the way, that is actually the name or was the name. I don't think it's sort of an upscale mail and order catalog in Germany. That's where
Dude,
they got those names from.
if you ever flew in an airplane and you look through like like the gift shop that's like printed in
Mhm.
the magazine, those products are Hemmecker Schlemmer.
Hammacher Schlemmer, love it.
Yeah, yeah, if you've ever seen those before, uh, like back in the day when you were flying
Mhm.
in a plane and they had the magazine in there, you'd open it up and it's like a virtual gift shop. And yeah, Hemmecker
Yep,
Schlemmer is the
Schlemmer.
company that made
Mhm.
those. So,
Yep, and,
yeah,
those actors were former, Mr. Universe, contenders too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
like legit bodybuilders.
Now, if I remember correctly, one half of these brothers was in like a commercial shortly after this, like the
Mhm.
obviously the big bulked one.
Yeah.
Now, it's gonna bother me because I can't remember the name of the taller, like hulked out German brother here, but he starred in Gladiator,
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
as yeah, and so it was interesting to see him, be an Academy Award winning film and then end up in this one, um,
Mhm.
but, I think his name is, it's, Gunther Schlierkamp. That's who Schlemmer was.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna take
then
your word on that. That was like a whole bite of uh, Eastern Europe that I'm not prepared, or Germania. That I would
well,
disagree. It sounds right. It
these are
sounds accurate.
names. These are names I will never have to remember. They just pop in there, race dance style. But um, and Ralph Moeller was the other. He was the
Hmm.
taller brother. So so yeah, I mean, it was crazy just how well uh, you know how well
Hmm.
cast this movie was.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
another person who I believe is a staple, and I think he's in all the Broken Lizard movies, and was actually the star of Psych, was James Roday Rodriguez.
yeah.
He's the German messenger who gets killed when he delivers the bad news.
Yes. Yeah. His his haircut is atrocious, by the way, in this movie. He's got like this it's like bleach blonde and
Mhm.
it's like bowl cut and it looks ridiculous.
Yep, it's like, I mean, imagine that's like was like every like fourth person in '90s Germany is what that haircut was going for.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they definitely were like trapped in the early 90s and when he appears he's like, "I have a delivery for the Baron." Like everyone is just played
Oh, but
ridiculous over the top
yes.
in this.
Mhm.
But
Which,
yeah.
speaking of, the Baron, we forgot to say this. Do you remember? I know who they originally tried casting as Baron von Wolfhausen.
No, no, I don't know who they did
It
that
was
with.
David Hasselhoff.
Oh my
That
god.
was the first consideration. It's the first guy they wanted to go to, but the Hoff was didn't he declined. Did not want to be a part of it, which is too bad. He was missing out.
I'm actually kind of
Beerfest was a
okay
great
with it.
time.
I'm okay
Yeah,
with it.
I think it
Yeah.
worked out fine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which yeah, I guess we've kind of, talked technical and talked shop for long enough. Maybe actually getting into some of the meat of this movie because as we mentioned,
Mhm.
there are some storytelling, elements of this for a comedy that are kind of odd, and one of them is this kind of long burning mystery that carries throughout the film,
Mhm.
which we've labeled the mystery of a whore and a stable boy
Oh, the
because
stable boy.
he's a stable boy.
The stable boy.
Which is the basis for this movie.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned the name Wolf House a couple of times, and really where this movie kind of begins is this mystery of the Wolf House family. As we mentioned, Donald Sutherland's character passes away, and in the process, the great grandmother of this family basically tells her boys take his ashes
Mhm.
and bring them back to the motherland, which is obviously Germany here, and do it during Beerfest, which
Yes.
I mean,
Greatest, because doesn't it technically start out as like they're actually at Oktoberfest, and then they're told that there's this secret underground beer drinking competition?
well, yeah, how it starts
Mhm.
off is they go to Beerfest. They're supposed to meet up with this guy who they've never met called Mr. Sneelvixen,
Mhm.
and they basically just have to wait until he discovers them. So yeah, they go to Beerfest. They're getting drunk. They're carrying the ashes around with them.
Mhm.
And of course, hilarity ensues, and they completely ruin the beer fest uncorking ceremony within this like big beer tent, and yeah, kind of goes crazy.
Yep.
Um, one thing I will say, kind of behind the scenes for this movie that I remember, I think it was on like either one of the tracks or one of the featurettes of like the original DVD, but this original beer fest scene was shot like two different ways,
Okay.
and I think what they ended up doing was originally it was supposed to involve like the German side of the family
Mhm.
and like the tradition of tapping the beer keg at Beerfest because it's actually a big
Ah.
deal. You're supposed to untap
Mhm.
the keg a certain way. You fill up a beer, and it's a really important thing. So they were going to do that initially, which I think may have provided some good like story building in a movie that you know wouldn't really need it.
It didn't need
Um,
it, but it has it.
yeah, yeah, it's
Mhm.
it's discussed, so they shot it that way, but yeah, so really after that point, this mystery kind of continues, like you
Mhm.
mentioned, and we get to a little bit more context of this other side of the German family. So you have the Wolfhouse family that lives in the
Mhm.
Americas, and then we discover the Wolfhausens that
Yes, the Wolfhausens.
yeah, the Wolfhausens that live in Germany.
Yeah,
Um,
and
yeah,
as they and these Wolfhausens are very prominent as they own one of the most successful brewing companies in Germany, which is, I
yeah,
think they reveal shortly after you meet the Baron.
yeah. Now they're fourth best though.
Yeah, they're
Fourth
fourth
best.
best. Which do you
Proud.
remember all the other beers that Germany has?
I remember it's like was it Roderhausen or Rodermausen or
Rotterhausen?
something? There's
Mhm.
Beck's
Bex is the
and
honestly, I just remember Bex because it's
yeah.
the last one they bring up.
Und
They
Beck's.
name the 4 und Bex? Yeah, und
Yeah,
Bex, und
und
Bex,
Beck's, yeah.
und Bex.
Yeah, it's oh god, before they even get to like the whole beer fest competition that we'll talk about, there's a really big reference that takes place as they have to, hurriedly leave Oktoberfest
Mhm.
for the drinking competition. Now, Joe, do you know what that whole part is referencing as they traverse this like underground
Oh,
in
yes, I
Germany?
do, because anyone who is anyone that is a Jean-Claude Van Damme fan will instantly recognize this from Bloodsport. It
Yeah.
is the descent into the Kumite is what we have here.
And I can't think of a better way to like show this journey either because it is so ridiculous.
Yeah,
And I think what's really funny about it is that the Broken Lizard guys all play
yeah,
a part in this like underground,
yeah,
and
they're all there.
they're all there and like like
Mhm.
random street vendors. One of Heffernan is like grinding a leg into a,
Yeah, and he's like
a
he's
meat
like dressed as
grinder.
a woman driving it's like he's like he's an old woman, like, putting a leg in a meat grinder.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Steve
then
Lem is like he's like a
he's a clown with a
he's a,
strap on.
yeah, totally. I miss you. I it's it is so striking and
Oh
so
my gosh.
ridiculous, man.
Yep.
It is
And Jay has the most calm one where he's just like a blind guy being circled by a kid on a tricycle.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's just wearing a turban, hanging out. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, it's just over the top ridiculous, and, I just thought it was funny because when I looked into it, apparently they adapted this because they were all big fans of Bloodsport, they would
Mhm.
watch it together, and they're just like, "I need to be able to put that in this movie somehow,"
Yeah.
and it works really well.
Yep.
It's really, really funny, so
Yeah, and it's one of several homages they do to different movies throughout this one, which again just shows like these guys also like they don't even like it. It's not that they just like making movies; they love movies in general, and you see this throughout Beerfest.
yeah,
So as we get through the story, there are at least 3 other ones that I can think of. Um, yeah, other 3 big references as we get through the story, but we'll wait till we get there. Wait till
yeah,
we get there. So we go down into the actual beer fest competition, and here we see basically people from all over the world from different countries um, participating in basically college drinking game competitions. You've got like beer pong, which I've never played beer pong like they do in this movie because they actually use paddles, which
yeah,
is
yeah,
phenomenal, and I feel like would be much harder than like traditional just toss the pong ball in the cup sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, they've got quarters, they've got, I'm trying to think of, like, the actual names, but basically, like, it's more or less Simon Says with pounding on the table and then doing, like you have to get, like, all the gestures right, going from
I
person to person.
I believe that's Thumper, isn't it?
Thumper, that's what it is, yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
But, yeah, so
like
basically college drinking games made into the Olympics.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
I remember, I can't remember all of these because they actually use, like, German names, but I think they called, the beer pong, like, Bierpaddel uh, and then, like, quarters was called, like, Bounce. Uh,
I
the,
use coin bounce? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Monkey Chug was, Monkey Krogan, like,
Mhm.
they were all just it was hilarious just to see how, like, you could just feel that, like, the vibe was that people had been in Beer Fest, and you're not supposed to talk about it, but they
Mhm.
adapted the games into, like, college drinking games, at some point. Because I mean, because these games reportedly in the movie go back, I mean, at least 100 years, maybe more.
Yeah.
Um, so it's hilarious because they have like these oil paintings on the wall of like the original Wolfhausens and like
Mhm.
yeah. So you get the vibe that like this isn't just some, it's literally like a fight club for beer drinking.
Which with on like, on those paintings, it turns out I think it was one of the actor's brothers actually made all those paintings, and one of them is one of, if I think, is it Buchanan or Polk? One of them is one of the presidents
Oh,
that's up
like
there.
you mean like oh, okay. The actual
Mhm.
painting or the
Yeah, the
pose?
actual well, no, the actual painting. One of them is one of our presidents. I'm trying to
Oh, James
uh,
Polk is up there?
who is it? I'm trying to it's killing me.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I never even really looked at that
It
because
was Polk. It was Polk. He was when he was up there. He was yeah, he's just one of the paintings,
okay.
which I don't know why he's up there. Because it's actually Kevin Heffernan's brother is the one who did all the paintings that are up there, and he now has them. He has all those paintings are up in Heffernan's office at Broken Lizard.
I see now even I have something to look out for next time because I completely didn't know that. But why would James Polk be painted?
I don't know. It may be the same reason that James Van Buren was chosen for Seinfeld for a gang
Oh, I guess.
for
I
the Van
mean,
Buren boys. I don't know.
yeah. Well, I mean, hey, I guess there have been stranger things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we got James Polk in Beerfest. We got Martin Van Buren in Seinfeld. Topsy turvy.
Yep.
But But yeah, dude. So speaking of calling it the Fight Club of beer, that's
Mhm.
literally like the first rule because as we find out, Mr. Sneelvixen that led the Wolfhouse brothers down there,
Mhm.
apparently there's a very hard rule that you don't bring Americans to Beerfest.
No, because Americans can't drink.
No, we
Mm.
can't.
No,
We're just
don't bring them there.
and and then Mr. Sneelvixen's led into a dark room where he's immediately executed,
Immediately
which
killed.
which which, which dude, for for a comedy, I was laughing really hard when that happened.
How couldn't you? It's like,
I
this was punishable by death?
it's something that I didn't know was possible until now.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was God, it's so striking,
Mhm.
man. Like it just because everything stops for like a brief second and then it just resets. Like it's like everyone's like, "Yep,
Yep.
he's dead now."
Yeah,
It's
he's gone. We move
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah. We got stuff to get through. Yeah, and this is something I wanted to ask
Mhm.
you, Joe, because I asked myself this question because I first saw this movie in college,
Mhm.
and my buddies introduced me to it, and ever since I've been glued. But does the idea of Beer Fest like sound possible to you? Like, does the premise of Beer Fest does it sound like it's something that could actually exist?
Oh, absolutely. Like there's no doubt in my mind that this could legitimately be going on somewhere. And like I feel like it should be like just an actual thing. Like I don't know, like the Olympics, sorry, I don't watch them heavily. Like even like the big things, like I'll watch tennis just 'cause I like tennis, and like a small parts of me wants to care about hockey for the Olympics, but I don't care about hockey for the Olympics. But if you had these guys playing beer pong, like with paddles, doing all these things, and compressively just getting worse, I'm like, I get why people would not like it. Like it's just it's for the same criticisms that the movie got that it's like glorifying drinking. But I think it'd be fun as shit to actually watch. Like watching drunk people trying to do these like things over these long periods of time. I think it'd be great. Like of all the shit entertainment we have for reality TV, this would actually be gold.
Dude, I'm right there with you on this. Like,
Yeah.
that's the exact same commentary I had was that for one, if it did exist, we wouldn't know because,
No.
well, we're not a part of it. So,
Mm-mm.
but I mean, yeah, I honestly think it would be more interesting to watch than the actual Olympics.
Completely.
Yeah,
God. And like speaking on like the reception of the movie for a little bit, because I'd mentioned that like the heavy criticism the movie got was that it glorified drinking. One thing they actually were very conscious about this movie is like at no point ever in this movie does someone drink and get behind the wheel of a car. Whenever
yeah,
they drink, they're always in taxis. The closest
yeah.
they get to actually driving is when they're on like 5 people on a tandem bicycle, which
Yes.
you definitely should not try. But then again, as someone who's tried doing a tandem bicycle sober, if you try getting out, my guess is as soon as you get out when you're drunk, you're just gonna fall over right away and give up and get a cab anyway.
I do want to point something
Mhm,
out about this 5-person tandem bicycle.
mhm.
There are 4 people that are actually pedaling to get that thing to go, but except for Jay Chandrasekhar. He is not pedaling. He's like standing straight up on the
Yep.
seat. If you watch, and I was always like, how did he get away with that? Just because he's the
He's the
director or what?
director.
Yeah, yeah.
He's the leader, technically.
Oh man.
He's the
Well,
Eminem of D12. He's the leader of the band.
they don't even know the name of the band. Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into the team of Americans that get absolutely embarrassed in Germany because
Mm-hmm.
I mean the brothers, Jan and Todd Wolfhouse, they get smoked by the Germans. They don't drink
Yep.
dark beer. They
No.
never had a chance. So
Mm-mm.
that's really where the jumping off point is for this movie.
Yep.
That we need to get the dream team together.
I was
And
gonna say this is the moment that every action junkie lives for because we have to get a team together.
oh, of course.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes. You got me all fast and furious, like ready. We got to get a team together. Let's do this, family and everything.
Yeah, normally in a Van Damme movie, it would be like this is where a friend or a family member would be murdered, and then that sparks it. In this
Then we
case,
get
we
a
do have a
training
death.
montage. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
get a death that feels this one. Now you've mentioned that Landfill, played by Kevin Heffernan, in other ways known as Phil Crundle. His origin story in this film is probably one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a
Yep.
comedy, where he's essentially just well, I'll actually use Finkelstein's or Fink's term
Mhm.
for it. He's a fat asshole. That's just
Yeah.
what he does.
He's the Eric Cartman of the group.
Yeah, and he gets fired from a brewery because they make thousands of bottles of beer
Oh
a
my
day, and
God.
he drinks 45 off the line, and he's the asshole.
He's the asshole. Which now that you saying that makes me realize how much I actually quote this movie on a daily basis, or like on maybe not daily basis is the right term, but how frequently I do. Because
Oh yeah.
anytime anyone ever mentions going to a brewery, my immediate thought goes to, "Oh, goddamn brewery!"
Yeah.
He launches the freaking like he just like when you meet Landfill, he's like doing a like a hot dog eating competition that
Yeah.
he wins effortlessly, and he just someone brings up the brewery and he just chucks the trophy, he just destroys it because he's mad about bringing the brewery up. Oh my god.
It is a hilarious background for a character that he's passionate about beer and food, and that's
Mhm.
pretty much it. Yeah, and we
Mhm.
mentioned Fink, or his full name is Charlie Finkelstein, who's like the
Mhm.
science nerd of the group. That something I wanted to point out about him. I didn't know if you noticed this, but one of like the origins that he was supposed to have in this movie was that he
Mhm.
had like the scientific method down for like the perfect drinking pose, and they talk
Mhm.
about this in the behind the scenes,
Mhm.
and there's a very specific point in the movie we'll mention later that they had to change, but his pose actually stayed in the movie because they shot it and then changed it last minute. So
Oh.
yeah, like you see it later when Fink and Landfill are like challenging each other to a chug. He does this specific pose that you can watch for next time,
Mhm.
and they don't explain it. They never reference it because they changed the whole background of it. But he does it like 2 or 3 times throughout the movie. That
Huh.
that here's this perfect,
Interesting.
yeah, here's the perfect pose. This is how we do it, and yeah, so it still exists in the movie, but um,
Mhm.
yeah, one thing, Joe. Now, no notes. I want you to close down all the documents you might be looking at.
Yes.
Now, one of our favorite characters in this movie is Barry Badgernath,
Mhm.
played by Jay himself,
Yes.
who becomes a male prostitute after falling on hard times. Now, Joe, I wanted to
Mhm.
play a game with you here
Oh
because
god.
many people have referenced Barry Badgernath and his male prostitution, but more
Do we
importantly,
do I have to guess prices?
what he charges for the
Oh
things that
my
he
god.
that he wants you to do. So no notes. I'll see the glare in
Mhm.
your glasses, sir. So all right. So here's what we're gonna
Mhm.
do.
Okay.
How much is it, Joe, to look at it?
I think that's 50 cents.
That is $1.
Ah, it's $1. Okay.
If we
Dollar to
round
look
up
at it.
if we round up for inflation, I mean you're probably close though. How much does Barry Bagnath charge to touch it?
That's $2.
Yes,
He doubles
two
that. Hmm.
$2 to touch the penis of Barry Bagnath. Now, how much does it cost to watch him touch it?
Is that 150? I feel
No,
like
sir.
that goes up. That price goes
It,
up to
go,
watch
it,
him touch it. Okay,
it goes up. It is $3 to watch him touch it.
him touch it. Okay.
Now we're going to increase the difficulty a little bit. How much does it cost to touch it while he touches his toes?
Is that 7? I feel like that's $7.
Maybe where you're from, it's $5. Very Now, this one might be easy to get, but I'm going to throw it out there. How
uh,
much is it to touch it while he touches your toes?
is that $7?
You're close.
That's
It's 6.
6. Damn it!
It's
Price is Right
$6.
failure. You can't go over, Joe. Come on.
All right, now this is where we can probably do lightning round. How much does a
Mhm.
BJ cost from Barry Badgernath?
$10.
Right, you are, sir. It'll
Boom.
it'll cost you a nice Chris Hamilton for
Mhm.
Barry to service you on that from that standpoint. How about an HJ?
HJ, it's 15.
No, it is not.
Damn.
It is $12. Now I always question this one. Why would a
Mhm.
BJ be less than an HJ? I just
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I just don't know.
I'm lost on it. Like, mouth stuff is always better than hand stuff.
Well, finally,
Mhm.
at the last, uh, I guess the last item on the menu of Barry
This one I
Badgernath.
remember.
How much does a ZJ cost?
Well, if you have to ask, you can't afford it, Mark. And this is a reference to actually a figure from American history. Do you know who it is?
Ooh, that's actually good. I don't know
Yeah.
what the ZJ is referencing.
It's referencing none other than American tycoon J.P. Morgan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm interested to know why that is the
He
case.
was asked about how much he paid for a yacht that he had purchased, and he responded with, "If you have to ask for the price, then you can't afford it."
Oh, okay.
So nothing nearly as sexual as Barry, but yeah, yep, it's a reference to J.P. Morgan.
See, and that's why I was thinking like, wait, so was JP Morgan doing turning tricks underneath a bridge or
I
like
imagine that's how he got his empire. He built it from there.
just one CJ at a time. Well, that is probably the most quoted line in
Mhm.
Beerfest is the ZJ
Yep.
moment. Um, now I do know what the ZJ explanation supposedly is.
Interesting. Okay.
But once again, this is one of those moments where, yes, we have the explicit label on this show,
Mhm.
but folks can Google this themselves. We don't need to necessarily do
Oh,
that for
no.
you. One thing I will say, though, is that it involves inebriation and the use of recreational drugs, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Um,
That's
but
fair.
yes, it is absolutely ridiculous. But Joe, you know what? I would say you're pretty close on ordering off of the Barry Badgernath menu. You knew quite a few of those and pretty
I kn
close.
I knew what I think I got 3 right.
Yeah,
So,
well,
enough that people know that I've tried, but I'm not a regular customer.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're just adjacent to this, you know?
Yes. Mhm.
Well, oh, man. Well, so we assemble this team, right? This is like the
Mhm.
all-stars. We've got guys that do volume. We've got the quarters stuff figured out.
Yep, that's
Um,
Barry. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And so actually a good part of this movie is actually just the training
Yep.
of drinking more beer.
Mhm.
Now we're not going to go like, word for word on how
No.
this montage is going to go, but I'd like to ask you a question, Joe, about the concept of drinking volume and tolerance and whether or not this seems feasible. Because, as you know, Joe, people
Mhm.
train for volume contests all the time, but liquor is a totally different concept than just consuming large quantities of
Mhm.
things. So, the question I want to pose here is, would the idea of training for a drinking competition really just improve tolerance and volume at the same time? Because I don't think you can really do both.
I don't think so. And I don't know because I just think like now I feel like my age has a lot more to play in with my tolerance for alcohol than anything because like college, yeah, I feel like I could rebound it within no time, or I could actually like hold my liquor a lot better. Because like now, basically, I loathe the idea of being in my 30s and hungover for 2 days in a row. So I definitely pace myself. Um, I feel like that has more to play. Where if I tried drinking now, I would just be, an alcoholic who couldn't drink as much as he used to. So I don't know if that works. Don't know if that works.
It's something I've always asked about, because just based on the science alone, like the more that you consume liquor, the higher your tolerance is going to be to it. So
Hmm.
that makes sense to me that you could achieve that because they do reference later in the movie that hey, I've been training for a beer competition all year long. My tolerance is through the roof.
Hmm.
But just because your tolerance for alcohol improves, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can just drink more all of a sudden.
No, not
Eh,
especially not chugging. Like I think that I don't know. I don't know if it can be taught. Might be able to. I can't do it, so I'll never know. I mean, I've literally won one shotgun competition in my life, and it had nothing to do with how well I could drink.
I was gonna say, I thought I thought you were gonna say it had nothing to do with beer. I just drew
No,
faster than the other guy did.
no. What had really happened is I had just gotten out of the shower because this was a time where like you could actually smoke in bars, and I hated like going in my bed smelling like cigarette smoke. So I took a shower when I got back at bar time, and my roommates were still drinking, and so they wanted a shotgun of beer as they literally handed it to me as soon as I got out of the shower. And we went out to our little patio area where where we always shotgunned because we didn't want to get on the carpet because we were
Yeah.
responsible apparently. And as soon as I start the shotgunning process, my towel falls off and I am just naked on the patio of my college apartment. And my two roommates just lose it. They just stop, they laugh, and they give up. And I kept going the whole time. It was the only time I've ever won.
Powerful
So
tactic. Yeah.
yes, just flash anyone who's there and you'll probably win.
Well, speaking of winning, as the core group here is training to beat the Germans, in this competition space, they do end up learning about some of this mystery that we've discussed that you're introduced to early in the film.
Hmm.
How are the Wolfhausens and the Wolfhouse families intertwined? How does this all make sense? And as they're training for beer, we come across Bobo, this wooden puppet or
Hmm.
toy that their grandfather
Yep.
carried with them.
Nightmare fuel.
Oh god, that thing's
It's
scary.
creepy as shit. Oh my
Yeah,
god.
but once again, dude, it carries the mystery
Yeah.
of this
Hmm.
movie that we're introduced to early on. And when I've read reviews of this, people were like really hard on this movie, like just not having solid cinematic or thematic
Hmm.
elements to it. And even though this isn't like a quote unquote spoiler free discussion of Beerfest,
Yeah.
this idea of like Bobo being the solution for like this missing recipe that's been gone for
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
70 years.
Mhm.
It's just like this actually a pretty good
It is
plot device.
because what it does is it increases the severity of the story because before that point, all you really had is that we have these upstart Americans who are kind of like this disgraced portion of a family that's wealthy in Germany for their beer brewing abilities, and we don't really know why. We just know that we don't like them. They shouldn't be there. And then out of creepy wooden doll pops the secret formula to the perfect beer, and they let the Germans know they have it. So now the stakes are even higher for like the villains because like okay, not only do we have to beat them because we're just basically villains for the sake of being villains, but now they actually have something of value to us that makes our villainy more palpable or more understandable.
Yeah, isn't it crazy how we're like dissecting a comedy that has a fairly compelling
It
like
does.
underlying
Mhm.
plot to it. Um, almost in the tune of like Ghostbusters, right? Like Ghostbusters
Mm-hmm.
has this crazy, like, just ridiculous mythos behind it. And we've kind of got that here too. We've got this like this, yeah, warring family politics
Mm-hmm.
and how things like critically changed because of, yeah, this like wooden doll and a secret beer formula that it contained. Um, so I don't know. I think one of the most quoted lines outside of the ZJ one does occur here,
Mm-hmm.
where where Barry says, I want to freeze it in the winter and skate on
Good
it,
on it.
and then melt it in the
Oh,
springtime
dang
and drink it."
Mhm, and then I think shortly either after that or before it was no, it's before that because it's when they're doing, like, the main montage was actually yet another very famous movie nod that they did. So if you recall, Barry is probably, like, the most animated drunk of the group,
Mhm.
and so he has this over he has definitely, like, rose-colored glasses when he's drunk. Everything looks better to him when he's drunk. And he also can't control himself very well. So after a night of heavy training, he wakes up in a field next to a deer that he's mutilated and he's butt naked. He says, "Oh no, not again." And he just gets up and takes off,
Butt naked, yeah.
completely naked. And this is it's a direct reference to an American werewolf in London.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yep. Hmm.
And the best part about that scene is that the deer's throat is completely ripped out,
Just
and
gone.
and and Barry's, like, his bottom lip all the way down, like, half his chest is just covered in blood, and, um, this is another example of, like, these
Mhm.
absolutely ridiculous comedic elements in this movie that people, I think, were just way too hard on,
Mhm. Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
because yeah, that one hit me like a sack of bricks the first time I saw it.
So good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's just an example of a lot of these micro jokes that just stack up for
Yeah.
this movie.
Yep, and another one that I have to even backtrack further on because it was before our previous mentions was actually right away at the first Beerfest, in the movie when there's a scuffle that bills out and Rolf says, "Do it. Come on, kill me. What you waiting
Oh,
for?"
yeah. Yeah,
Predator
yeah.
reference right there.
Yeah, do it
Mhm.
now. What you waiting for? Yeah, yeah. Oh god, that was great.
Mhm. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
it
no, this movie does a great job at being, much more than it apparently offers about a comedy of just a bunch of guys drinking for a acidine beer drinking competition. It just kind of keeps putting things on top of it because you have not only that's of course the Germans, but you've got like strife within the group where the members don't function together. So they have to actually not only come together to like actually drink better, but have to come together as an actual team
yeah.
because you've got Barry and
Yeah, Barry and
and
Todd.
is it Todd? Yeah, Barry and
Yeah,
Todd. I couldn't remember which one of the brothers it was. Yeah, Barry and Todd don't get along because Barry, I think, slept with Todd's wife at one point.
specifically, he doinked Todd's
Doinked
boyfriend or
Todd's
Todd's
his
girlfriend.
girlfriend.
Yeah.
Now, is
Yeah.
it girlfriend now wife?
Now wife,
Yeah. Hmm.
but it wasn't just as simple as them hooking up. There was also a third party named Silo Johnson, who apparently was not storing corn in that thing.
There's a great nickname. Oh my.
Yeah, it's hilarious though that, these kinds of things are woven into this movie
Oh,
because,
mhm,
there is that cat and mouse element that you mentioned with, like, the bad guys versus the good
mhm.
guys. There's this idea of, like, the various intel that they both kinda get on each other throughout, and them kinda being coached too by their great-grandmother who who brings up the idea of training by drinking ram's piss.
Oh my god, yeah. Because if you can drink Ram's piss, you can drink anything.
She says "If you can drink ram's piss, fuck, you could drink anything." And then there it's like, "Hey," she said, "Fuck." She really does talk like a whore. And that's another thing that we kinda glossed over is that, like,
Mhm.
we the slow burn of finding out that
Oh,
your great grandma was actually a prostitute at one
yep.
point.
Mhm.
But to her credit, man, she has one of the most heartfelt moments in this movie, where she, like, looks at them and she goes, "Hey, she really is a whore." Then she says, "Aren't we all whores in our own way?" Or something like that, and they're just like, "Oh, wow, she's right." Oh, god, it was great, man.
Oh, man.
Yeah, now to kinda reinforce your
Mhm,
point, though, before of how the people who have been tough on this movie for, like, glorifying
mhm,
beer drinking, like you mentioned, they don't get into cars, they don't do any of that
mm,
stuff. All the beer that's consumed throughout this movie that's, like, actually real beer is
mhm.
technically non-alcoholic beer on top of
Very
that.
true, mhm,
Yeah.
and would like, so if you recall the beer from this movie, it's all basically lighter looking beer, or when I say lighter looking beer, it doesn't mean like light beer, but your more traditional beer, coloring. However, there is some dark beer that's consumed in this movie, and O'Doul's doesn't make a dark shaded beer. Do you know how they pulled this off? Because it was still non-alcoholic.
Was it tea?
No, it
Oh.
was O'Doul's mixed with Diet Coke.
Oh,
Oh, I know. I
no.
feel like that's a victory just in itself just to drink that.
I was gonna say that
Oh, it doesn't
that
sound
act
good at all.
that makes me feel uneasy just thinking about
Yeah.
that.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, because there's a couple spots where they drink dark beer in this movie,
Mhm.
and the second time they do it or the third time near the end, like, it's clearly CGI.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like,
Yep.
they're not really drinking that.
No, no, which
Um,
is I mean, that and that CGI bit as well as, one bit where they're playing ping pong, beer pong, there's a very dramatic like jumping hit to like make it in. Not only were they drinking real beer the whole time, but they were also actually playing. Every shot that you see, every drinking game you see, they're
yeah,
actually playing those drinking games. So every time
yeah,
you see a beer land in a glass or in a cup, someone actually made that. It wasn't thrown in or dropped right above or to make it look like someone threw it in.
yeah.
So yeah, great great commitment to actually playing your drinking games.
I mean, it's pretty funny. I think the only part that,
Hmm.
wasn't actually done was when the mug gets broken and then the dude's
Oh,
chewing
probably not. Probably not. Um, but and out of this competition also comes one of my favorite phrases I'd never heard before this, and still use to this day to describe someone who is a lot of talk and doesn't act a lot on anything that they say. Because like all talk and no walk, honestly, pretty lame sounding. Not nearly as great as he's all fur coat and no trousers.
Oh,
Oh my
absolutely.
god.
Yeah,
Favorite one of my favorite phrases of all time. Thank
yeah,
you, British drinking team, for introducing me to "He's all fur coat and no trousers."
yeah.
Oh.
Pip Scutney, that's his name. Yeah. I that is another part about this that I think that folks should look out for the next time you watch it is that, like,
Mhm.
just the immediate bonding between the American team and the British team,
Yep.
like, they introduce them to the whole thing. They get a little lippy with each other because they actually face them head to head in the next
Mhm.
Beerfest, but, like, you can tell those guys just love each
Fucking had a
other.
great
It's
time. Yeah.
yeah. And then the fact that the British people are always slapping each other, I never got that, but it's
I don't
you know,
either. That's how they psych each other up. They just slap, 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 slap.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, as we've mentioned, this isn't really a spoiler-free review or
Mm-mm.
introduction to the movie, but we do wanna talk about a couple things with regards to, where Beerfest kind of falls within, like the legacy conversation here
Mhm.
because, Broken Lizard has made, what, like 7 movies now, and people are pretty much, when they talk about Broken Lizard, they
Mhm.
compare them with,
Yeah.
Super Troopers and all that.
Oh
So
yeah. It's interesting that they always compare them amongst themselves and never to really any outside movies. It's just like, nope, we're just gonna compare them just with their own body of work, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when
It
you
is
think
funny
about it.
though. It's
Hmm.
true. I've never heard anybody like go like, "Oh yeah, let me start comparing a Broken Lizard comedy to, like a Monty Python style of
Yeah,
comedy."
yeah. It
You
was
know?
pretty great, but it was no Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Let me tell
Yeah.
you.
Well, I know what I'm gonna say, Joe, but
Hmm.
where do you think Beerfest falls within the Broken Lizard catalog?
This is one where I am going to actually like pull out my Jeremy Clarkson analogy. Um, so I would say, in like as far as legacy goes, where this belongs is solid number 2 spot, right under Super Troopers. And just because Super Troopers is the one that really, I mean, their first really, really big movie, it was everyone like when that movie came out, everyone loved it. Everyone kind of knew what it was. The movie didn't take itself seriously, and it was fantastic. It's what put them on the map. And I'm gonna say that this is the better movie. I think Beerfest is the better movie between the 2. So where the Jeremy Clarkson thing comes in is this honestly is probably like let me think of the way he puts this exactly. He's like he has like he knows a German Shepherd is a fantastic dog, easily trained, big, protective, everything you want in an animal. But he has his dog, and he really likes his dog. The German Shepherd's the better dog, but he loves his dog, so therefore his dog is better to him. And I think like Super Troopers is Jeremy Clarkson's dog, and honestly, Beerfest is the German Shepherd. If we're gonna keep going with more even more German stuff, I think it's the better made movie. But it's never gonna be quite like seeing these guys doing what they did for the first time.
See, now this is where I've disagreed with people pretty much ever since I watched Beerfest.
Mhm.
You know, I love Super Troopers. Don't get me wrong. I think it was a funny movie, and when it came out, like you said, none of us had really seen something like this, or
Mhm.
that that level of just weird humor.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, I do think it is the number one. I think that
Mhm.
Beerfest trumps and pulls ahead of Super Troopers
Yeah.
because it does like its humor doesn't rely on that weirdness that Super
Mhm.
Troopers does. It's pulling out really, really funny jokes that frankly you don't
Mhm.
have to be high to appreciate. I'll
No.
just be blunt. Um, and I really do think that more people talk positively of Super Troopers because
Mhm.
it was more popular. People had,
Mhm.
had more exposure to it. And
Yep.
I think that's the only reason why people say this is because they haven't seen Beerfest,
Mhm.
but they say, "Well, Super Troopers was funny. I don't think anything's gonna top it," you know?
Yeah.
A
Mhm.
and that's usually where that conversation starts.
Yeah, and
Is
it's not fair to Beerfest. It just isn't.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, it really isn't fair because, Super Troopers doesn't have a bad plot, you know?
no.
I mean, it still tries to do
Mhm.
something, but even then, like, part of it falls into that Seth Rogen territory where it feels less like a comedy and more like a not a fully committed to action movie,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I
And
agree. Mhm.
yeah, and I think that's where some people, forget how different the second half of Super Troopers is from the first
Mhm.
half.
Yeah.
Um, we still do get some pretty ridiculous and stupid things that happen in Beer
Mhm.
Fest, don't get me wrong, it's not an Academy Award winner for a reason.
No.
Um, but I mean, I think that the humor is more consistent throughout that movie.
Yeah.
I really do.
And I would argue that, like, Super Troopers, the story takes the backseat to the comedy, is that it's meant to go from really joke to joke, but
Yeah.
it has enough of a story where it doesn't feel like we're just moving from one gag to the next. Because, like, when you look at, like, a lot of major reveals in Super Troopers, they're within a gag. So, like, when I think was it when we find out that the department may actually be in trouble, it's when they're doing what am I thinking of? The bulletproof,
Yeah, yeah,
jockstrap?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep, and, like, they're doing, like, this stuff within that, whereas, like, Beerfest is like, no, like, there is a legitimate story here, and there's comedy within the storytelling that just
Yeah.
works really well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a really good point because, I don't really feel like there's not many sight gags
Mm-mm.
in Beer Fest, I mean, it is kinda comedy woven into dialogue
Yeah.
and it just happens to work. It's kind of like the effect of and I don't wanna use it again, but I will, I say that a lot, don't I? I'm not going to say this, but I'm going to say it now. Um, but it does kinda remind you of
Mhm.
how, like, Aykroyd and Murray and those guys kinda behave in a character.
Mhm.
Like, you don't feel like you're living for a joke, you feel like you're living to observe what that character does next.
Yeah. Mhm.
So, yeah, and I know I'm probably getting too poetic with it, but either way, I think that's why it truly
Mhm.
feels like a more, matured movie, if I can even use that term, in
With this group.
relation. Yeah, yeah, well, yeah.
Mhm.
But, and that's not to shit on Super Troopers. It's still
No,
a great
no.
film.
Yeah, love Super Sick, and, like, when it comes to honestly, when it comes to this group, I think the film they made that I wasn't, like, a big fan of, was Dukes of Hazzard,
Yeah.
and Dukes of Hazzard, like, I remember, like, I saw it when I was, again, like, college age, I loved cars, so initially I liked the movie, but that's, like, of all their films, I can't go back and watch it and feel like, "Yeah, this is still fun."
Well,
Um,
but Dukes of Hazzard still isn't a Broken Lizard movie,
no, it's
you
Warner
know?
Brothers, yeah.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
just involved in it, and Jay
Yep.
directed it, but, I mean, but yeah, that's not like it's not their brand. That's
No.
not their brand of comedy. It's
Mhm.
it's totally different direction. So, I mean, yeah, that's why I think, for one, Beerfest is a movie that I used to watch almost every week, and
Mhm.
I would eat a ton of pizza and laugh my ass off for a night, and so
Mhm.
it has a very special place in my heart. But one thing I will say about this, we've kind of alluded to it a little, is that there are a lot of reviewers out there who have called this a bad movie that just happens to be funny.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, I know we're both going to, passionately disagree with that.
No, yeah.
But I guess, if we just to be objective here, if we had to pull
Mhm.
elements out of this movie that we would just call bad, that might benefit from a rewrite or might benefit
Mhm.
from a different direction, I mean, what would you change about this movie?
I don't know, not much, because honestly, like, even the parts that, again, like, are dumb, like transitioning from landfill 1 to landfill 2, like, "Oh, he just has a twin brother we knew nothing about this whole time? That's awfully convenient." But they call that out within the movie when he's like, "You know what? Just go ahead. If it's easy for you, just call me Landfill. I know it's not my name, but you just go ahead and do it." And
Yeah.
if I mean, if anything, I'll just do everything Landfill does to make it more comfortable for you. So it's like, so he's the same character. Like, it was dumb, but, like, they made fun of it within the movie. So, like, they're aware of it and they
Yeah,
turned it into something.
and that's the whole point. It's making fun of the
Yeah.
fact that a lot of these movies that they're referencing, that's
Mhm.
how they advance the plot, you know?
Mhm.
It's not that characters actually grow or anything
No.
actually meaningful occurs from it. It's
Mhm.
just that somebody dies and they use it to create motivation,
Mhm.
and but nothing really truly changes. That's what the whole point of these '80s movies was. It's like these '80s action movies, yeah, people die, but no one
Yeah.
really cares.
No, it's a cheap plot device.
Yeah, well,
Mhm.
but once again, highly quotable movie or moment in this movie where he says, it's like, "Yeah, landfill told me all about you guys, so I don't feel like we have to have that weird getting to know each other phase." So like, yeah, they
Mhm.
they totally call it out.
They did. And, like,
Um,
beyond that, like, if you look at this, like, pretty much every literary story follows, like, the hero's journey, right? You've got a status quo, call to action, introduction of a character that moves us out from an area. We have a rising action, a climax, falling action, resolution, back to status quo. And this movie does that. It
it's
follows
true.
that perfectly. It does the same thing that really good storytelling does. You might not like it because it's comedy. It's going to be subjective.
Yeah,
That's what's going to happen. Art's subjective in general. So, if you don't like a movie, fuck it off. Doesn't matter. Someone may love the movie for the same reasons you hate it. Um, but God, like, I don't know. Like, yeah, are people gonna hate on this movie? Sure. The humor isn't necessarily highbrow. Um, but at the same time, when you're with your buddies, like, who's telling highbrow humor jokes while you're drinking?
I was gonna say we can't all be watching the classics, Professor Highbrow.
Yeah, no one's doing that, and that's another thing that they even like, the cats said to the people who were basically, I don't wanna say, like, naysaying the movie, but, like, they didn't like the movie, saying it was bad, and it was, again, like, glorifying drinking. It's like, what we're glorifying is all the social aspects of you hanging out with your buddies, and that's
Yeah.
what you see them doing throughout this movie, is them, like, again, like, they're overcoming something, whether it's, like, you've got their personal turmoil and the greater turmoil, you've
Yeah.
got them, like, growing together, them having a good time. Oh my god, when they crash the college party so
Oh,
they can do more training. Oh, and then is it Fink ends up duct taped to, like, monkey bars or something?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
he's plastic wrapped to the monkey bars.
Yeah, this is like when my buddy ended up in someone's, like, shed after a night of drinking, and he
Yeah.
called us, he's like, "Yeah, I'm in the shed, come get me." We're like, "Where the fuck is the shed, man? No one knows what you're talking about."
I gotta say, man, if there's one thing that I will say about this movie that, hits a little too close to home, it's when they get caught at that party and the cops show up and the teenager says to Jan, he goes, "Dude, what are you, like, 35?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, watching this again, I'm like, "Fuck, I am.
Yep.
Damn it."
Shit. Oh my
But
god, so we're Beerfest age.
we
We're
are.
finally there.
We
We can do this now.
yeah, we could
Oh, I would
oh my
die.
god.
I would actually die. I would not do this. This is a bad
And
idea.
Joe, that's the disclaimer at the beginning of the movie. If you drink that much
Mhm.
beer, you will die.
Yeah, which was, I believe, a studio required disclaimer. They originally weren't gonna have that there.
Yeah, in an age where
Mhm,
people are, had been eating Tide Pods and,
mhm.
uh, you know, killing themselves in unique ways, maybe it's the disclaimer that we all needed. We just didn't know it
Yep.
yet.
Yep, absolutely. And some fun post stuff in this movie because you remember it ends with them, meeting one Willie Nelson
It's true.
and being told of a secret underground pot smoking competition. And then you have Coming Soon Pot Fest, which they acknowledge was never actually meant to set up a sequel.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like oh, it's an open-ended story, meaning like anything could happen to this group of guys with what they're doing. There was apparently, I think, talks for a while of making it into like an animated something, and then that ultimately ended up falling through. But something that didn't fall through at the end of this movie is that when they were done and they wrapped up filming, they actually had another boat race between the German team and the American team.
Oh, really?
Yep, and the
Yeah.
American team, point of country pride, despite the fact that many of the German team were also Americans, they won 2 out of 3 games that they played. So, go America.
Hey, we're not that drunk, cheeky bastards.